Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear students, welcome to our class. So last class we stopped till here. So in this class we will go from Newton's third law of motion. Last class we stopped in Newton's second law of motion. So in this class we will see the Newton's third law of motion. If you take a balloon like this and you fill it up with air, okay, and when you release the air vertically like this on a surface, what happens is that if you leave it, okay, the balloon will go upwards like this and the air will push it. Okay, so this balloon is there, you fill it with air, this is surface. If you leave it like this, the air from here it comes down and it hits it and it pushes the balloon upwards. So why does it occur? So I'm giving you this example because Newton's law of motion is based on that. Okay, so so while jumping out of the boat, for example here, if you see, while jumping out of the boat, the foot, the foot exert the backward force on the foot like this, boat like this. Okay. At the same time, the force is exerted by the boat on your foot. The foot, there is a force that is exerted from the boat to your feet. Okay. So it makes you move forward. So if you when you jump, there is a force that makes you go forward, and there's a force from your foot. It moves the boat forward. So this is what here you can see the force that exerts uh, you know makes the boat move backwards. It is what is called as action. So you do some action, and because of that, which makes you move forward. Okay, so this is action and this is a reaction. Like here, if you leave it, there's an action, that is the air coming out and exerting on the floor, and there is a reaction, that is it pushes the balloon upwards. Okay, so that is the reaction. So two bodies and two forces are involved in this problem. Okay, two bodies. One is here, you take the balloon and the floor. That is air from the balloon and the uh, the balloon and the floor. And the force from the balloon is the air, and force from the floor is that air that hits and comes back. Okay, so two bodies are uh, involved. If it is in a same object, here you can see we are pushing the truck, but the reaction, the backward force is applied on the same object, that is here, so it will not move truck. But if they are moving from here in the floor, the backward the reaction, it is in a different object called as the this road or the floor, so now the truck will move. So this is how action and reaction works. But what is Newton's third law is that according to his law, to every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. For every reaction, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So this is the definition of Newton's third law. And the action and the reaction act on two different bodies. Okay, but if the action reaction are on same body, they will consider balance force and the body will not move. Right here. Okay. So there are three significant features of the third law of motion. If in the exam they ask you what are the three significant features of the Newton's third law of motion, you have to write this. Okay. The first one is in this action and the two forces that are there, right? So we cannot say which force is action and which force is the reaction. It's not constant, they are interchangeable. Okay. We cannot say which force out of the two forces is the force of action and which one is the force of reaction, because they are interchangeable. The next is action reaction always act on two different bodies. If they are acting on the same body, then it will not move, so it has to act on two different bodies. The third one is the force of reaction appears so long as the force of action acts. As long as the force of action is there, then the force of reaction appears. Okay, so these two forces are simultaneous. And you have to remember that it is not necessary that the two bodies, two objects among which the force of action reaction act are in contact, because something like magnets, there is no contact, but there is a magnetic force between them. Okay, so here also repulsion between two magnets can happen. So they have given an example here like swimming. Swimming also is same. It acts with the same principle, and also rocket. It is same like the balloon example. It is also the an example for the Newton's third law of motion. So rocket is an example of Newton's third law of motion. Next one is conservation of momentum. We all studied about momentum. So here there is a law called as conservation of momentum. So according to this law, what happens is that if two or more objects collide with each other, then there is a the momentum is conserved. Momentum is not changed before and after the collision, except there is some external force acting on them. So the momentum will only change if there is an external force acting on them. So based on the Newton's law of motion, we know that the rate of change of momentum is equal to the force we saw earlier. So here we have taken initial momentum P1 and the final momentum after some time T is P2. So you can see force is equal to uh, final momentum P2 minus initial momentum by T, the time taken. So now if we keep the force is equal to 0, let's say that there is no force, then what happens is that we will have P2 is equal to P1. How? See, in substitute F is equal to 0, P2 minus P1, okay, P2 minus P1 by T. Now what happens? This T will go here, T into 0 is 0. So 0 is equal to T2 minus T1, okay. Now this T2 minus T1 will come here, so it will become T1 equal to T2 is already there. So if there is no force, then the both momentum is same. So that is what is called as the conservation of momentum. Okay. So they have given some examples. So here this is based on Newton's third law of motion. If you hit this, this force will act upon this action reaction, then equal force will be applied this. Okay. Then based on the formulas we saw earlier, there are some example problems. You have to write it down. Okay, it is very easy to understand. You just have to know the formula. If you don't remember it, just go back and see. Okay, and then when you substitute and evaluate, the answer will come. So like that, there is another problem they have given. Okay, then the next topic is friction. All of you must know what is friction. Okay, for example, there is a two body, then they are moving, so there will be some friction in between them. Okay, so if there is a ball, it is rolling, okay, on a floor. After some time, it will stop. Why? Because of the friction that it takes from the floor and the surface of the ball. So that is what is called as friction. So according to Newton's first law of motion, a moving body continues to move along. A moving, for example, there is a moving body. It continues to move along a straight line until unless there is an external force applied on it. So if there is a floor that has a friction, okay, this like it acts, it gives some force, okay, so it will automatically stop after some moving, okay. So a resistive force between two objects before moving, before the body starts moving, is what is called as static friction, okay. A resistive force between these two before moving is static friction, but once this body starts moving on the surface, the friction between them is called as sliding or kinetic friction. So you should know the differences. So there are some factors that affect the friction. Okay, For example, the smoothness of the surface, one of the factor on which friction depends. If it's very smooth, for example, there is a smooth surface, then it's a rough surface. If you apply the same force on a same object, okay, in this rough surface, the ball will stop early, but in the smooth surface, it will go little farther than this rough surface. Okay, so that you have to remember. So there are some advantages and disadvantages of friction in our day-to-day life. You can read about it here. Okay, like the many examples they have given, you can just read about it, inshallah. And the next topic is thrust and pressure. So the force acting upon the surface of a body perpendicular to it is called as thrust. Okay, for example, um, let's say there is an object. Okay, the force acting upon the surface of a body, okay, perpendicular to it is what is called as thrust. Okay, that you have to remember. So they have given an activity, you can read about it. So when you take the pressure, pressure is equal to thrust by area. Okay, pressure is equal to thrust by area. So the SI unit of pressure is Newton meter power minus 2. Okay, so this unit has been given a specific name called as Pascal. Okay, they honored a scientist called as Blaise Pascal. So they kept this unit as Pascal. So the pressure unit is Pascal. Okay, so he was a French philosopher and mathematician. So he made a Pascal's law of hydraulics regarding the transmission of pressure through fluids. In the fluids, how the pressure is transmitted, he discovered about that. So he was honored by giving the unit for the pressure with his name. Okay. So yeah, we have completed this lesson. I know this lesson is a little difficult because it's physics, so you have to read multiple times, and whatever the problem is there, you have to solve in your notebook. In our online class, we cannot solve it because it will take more time. You'll be bored, so you have to sit down and read the question well. Then you can solve yourself because the formulas are uh, where we saw the formula in the previous topics. So you just have to read the given details and apply the formula and then find out the solution. That's it. So yeah, you have to put on your efforts. Otherwise, it is very difficult. I know in this period you have to put on your effort because online classes it is not like the regular classes. So dear students, please put on some effort. If you don't understand, you can message me or and also you can discuss with your friends because discussing with your friends, those who know well, if you know something, you can teach to your friend, and if your friend doesn't know anything, he can teach you something. So group study, all this will benefit, inshallah. But make sure you don't waste your time. Okay. So we have completed this lesson and write these notes what you have learned in your notebook. Okay. So you have 5 days gap between one class to another class, science class. So you can write the notes in your free time and also solve the problem and memorize the definitions. Okay, see you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.